Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Micah Shippee. I'm excited to work with you for this hour block with Microsoft Education and Q program. I have a few things I'd like to go over with you about using virtual reality in the classroom. I'm really excited about this area, and I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my slides. I'll start at first. Give me 1 second here. All right, do this. Excuse me here. Get this loaded up. Perfect. All right, excellent. All right, so virtual reality in the classroom. So for today's presentation, I have some slides that I'll go through and walk you through some pro tips and some concepts that some colleagues and I have been using with virtual reality for a little while now. And then we'll see if we can get into some hands-on time as well towards the end. I am a co-author of a book called Reality Bytes, and the book is about innovative learning using augmented and virtual reality. The book is full of stories of over 20 educators from around the globe that are using both augmented and virtual reality in their classrooms. So we have stories about how they use them. We also have the alignment to ISTE frameworks, the SAMR model, and some discussion about extensions for and how to do these types of activities. My co-authors are Christine Lyon-Bailey and Jesse Lubinsky. We're also the co-founders of a company called Ready Learner One. We're an emergent technology solutions company that focuses in both the corporate and K-12 space. I'm also a grade 8 social studies teacher in New York. So I teach full time, and I'm also the CEO of this company. Christine is a elementary school principal, a primary school principal, and Jesse is our full-time employee at Ready Learner One. So we are excited about these emergent tools and how to leverage them meaningfully in the classroom. And we work to help educators and people in the business world to move past the novelty aspect of these tools and start to really dive deep into using them in a more meaningful manner. Our book is found on, Amazon and other places wherever you buy books, I suppose. The book's full of interactive features, so you can use your smartphone, to release augmented reality experiences that literally pop off the pages of the book. If you grab a copy, please ping me on Twitter or email. I'll give you that at the end here, and I'd love to know your thoughts. Today we're going to look again at specifically virtual reality in the classroom, and I bring it to you as a lens of a middle grades teacher. I've spent years in both grade 7 and grade 8, so my students range in age from 11 to 14. I also have worked with high school students and younger elementary school students in some of my consulting work around the globe. So my perspective comes from that of application. So yes, some of this is very exciting, but I also want to think about what's very pragmatic and useful in the short term. These slide resources are available to you using bit.ly/all lowercase VRRBMIE. So this slide deck that I'm going through today is accessible for you to have. All right, let me make an adjustment here. Okay, so I do have my chat window open. I am comfortable looking at the chat window while I'm speaking with you. So if you have a question about a tool as I'm on that tool or something, please just drop it in the chat. I have it open on the side here, so I'm happy to kind of take a tangent. I love tangents, and hopefully provide some meaningful insights for you. All right, so AR and VR. So I want to take a look at these two technologies so that when we talk about virtual reality, we know which of the two spaces, what differentiates them. There's been a lot of historical imagery of using virtual reality. I think this guy on the left might have invented it. Probably not. I don't know what that is, but it doesn't look safe on his head. In the sci-fi world, the young man on the right here, you see that this idea of being transported using technology has been around for a long time. In my youth, I'm not ashamed to say the Viewmaster, that red tool there, was my ticket to the world. As a child, I could look inside these discs and slide them and be transported to different places. That technology has shifted to Google Cardboard and this black or this blue device that holds a phone. So you just take a phone and slide it right in there. And when you slide it in there, again, it's more immersive. One kind of cool thing, oh, I have it right over here. Hang on one second. Forgot I had this handy. The Viewmaster company that I remember from my youth actually reinvented themselves to hold a phone. So you can drop your phone in there, and instead of sliding a disc, you're actually in a virtual space. So I think that's kind of neat that they've pivoted with technology. Now, in our book, my colleagues and I developed what we call the XR ABC framework as a way to approach these tools. And before I get into it, let me preface that by saying that ABC does not mean that we all need to get to the level of C. There's plenty of A's that are amazing. So let's take a look at that. So first of all, XR. XR is a acronym that we use to talk about different forms of reality. So the X might be A for augmented. It could be V for virtual. So those are all terms of mixed reality. This is the mixed reality continuum, and it shows you that you go from the real environment, and as you move towards virtual, your first stop is augmented reality, which is adding to virtual. Then as you move farther to the right on your spectrum, you go towards a fully virtual environment. So the two of them do have a little bit in common, and that's that they're using three-dimensional computer-generated assets often. That kind of is one of their commonalities. The ISTE standards are referenced in the book. We have found them to be very tangible in understanding the use of these tools and how each different activity we approach with students can fit a different side of the ISTE framework. For augmented reality, this is, in its simplest form, it's adding to where we are. So about 18 months ago, Pokemon Go became such a big deal, and everybody was throwing these little ninja balls at the characters, right? If you look at the phone in this child's hand here, you'll see that globe has images popped off of it. So that is a form of augmented reality. On the right, you've got virtual reality in its immersive form, where we have a user with an HTC Vive on their head, and they are in a different place. And man, when you take off a virtual headset, it's automatically like, whoa, I'm back. You feel like you've returned to a place. And that's really relevant, because when looking at any of these tools, presence, the topic of presence is very important. In our classrooms, do we want to retain full presence 100% of the time in our learning environment? Or maybe in a specific activity, we might use augmented reality to have students have dialogue about a concept right in the room. Here at home in New York, I've just finished over 3 months of remote teaching that we weren't quite ready for because of coronavirus. And, presence in my classroom didn't exist. So then virtual presence is the next phase. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how I've experimented a bit with some of my student groups. But virtual presence allows you to be in a new place. So one Microsoft product I'll talk about is called AltSpace VR. I've been using AltSpace VR semi-weekly to attend professional development. And I go into a room, and I'm in the room talking to colleagues from all over the planet, and I feel like I'm there, and I take it off, and I'm home, and I get to collaborate. So I think it's left to us to think about how can we start to use those tools with our students. The absorb, blend, create is what ABC stands for. So A for absorb, B for blend, and C for create. And for virtual reality today, that's how I'll speak about it. I'm doing augmented reality, so the other side of this presentation. I think I'm scheduled for next week. You can follow me on Twitter. I'll post that out for you. The schedule is still being refined. So let's go right into VR absorb. So taking a deeper look at absorbing content. Now, if you think of interactivity, absorbing often has to do with just sitting and taking it in, right? So in this case, VR absorb comes in a couple of forms. You might have a photograph, but using something like Google Street View, that photograph might be a 360 photo sphere. So let me share an example with you. Let's go. Let's see what this button does. All right, I'll skip over here and we'll go to Maps. Okay, sweet. Okay, so if I want to go to the Eiffel Tower, for example, let's go to the Eiffel Tower in Paris. The one in Vegas is significantly less exciting in Las Vegas. Okay, so here's the Eiffel Tower. Notice this view is computer generated. In the bottom left, I'll click my satellite view, and I see a little bit cleaner, nicer looking image. I can go a little bit in here, click 3D. We'll get a 3D view there of the Eiffel Tower. So in terms of using this virtually with students, you know, one side of virtual reality is not so much immersive as it's an experience like a field trip, taking a student somewhere. So here, I just brought you to the Eiffel Tower. Now, this is not super exciting, although it is pretty cool. But in the bottom left, bottom right here, you'll see I have this little yellow character called Pegman. I can take Pegman and drag the character around and drop him right at the blue line at the Eiffel Tower. Now, as I move around, I'm in a 360 photo. And this 360 photo is helping me to see Paris in a whole new way. And that's a lot cheaper than a plane ticket. This photo is a Street View photo. Now, Apple has photos that they take. Google has 360 photos that they take. I know that Microsoft has been working in that space as well. So there's multiple companies that are contributing to this 360 world or hiring other companies to do it. And you'll notice I'm just zipping down the road. So in terms of virtual reality, I'm transported to a different place. I can do this on a tablet, a desktop. I can do it in VR glasses if I wanted to. There's multiple ways to approach this content. And again, this was just Google Maps. I'll do that step again for you. I did it rather fast. Maps.google.com. And I'm typing in a location. Maybe I'll go to the London Eye. Right. And then down here, I can click on Pegman and just drop Pegman. Now, these blue dots are usually done by people who have chosen to add their own. This is by someone named Roy Rave. And I can look inside of the London Eye. And again, that's a 360 photo. All right, let's head back over here to my slide deck. Zip ahead. Okay, so the idea of VR absorb is transporting students to look at things. So the most meaningful part of really any of these experiences is the dialogue that we have with students. So while we can take them someplace on the planet, while we can engage them in perhaps a game or a simulation, the conversation we have about how people are represented, how places are represented, how they got that way, there's really powerful meaning making that comes out of it. One of the easiest, I think is a good word, easiest uses of VR in the classroom is to build empathy. One of my favorite virtual reality experiences that I would call VR absorb is the Anne Frank house. The Anne Frank house, using something that you have to use Google or Oculus Go's for that. You put students in the Oculus Go, and they literally take a tour of the Anne Frank house, narrated by a young actress who sounds like she might have been the age of Anne Frank when she wrote her journal, her diary. Very powerful experience. Children are quiet afterwards. They have to break it down and make some sense out of what they just experienced because they learn about her tragic death at the end. So this is that empathy is such a big piece that we can start to help students to understand the experience of other. VR Absorb also has some other things. So photos are so powerful, but I tell you, I get really excited about video. So here is a US specific example. I'll pop up for you. Oops, wrong one. I think I need to adjust my share screen. Excuse me one second. Let's go back. And please let me know if you don't see something that I'm sharing, if I made an error. I want to make sure that everything's nice and clean for everybody. So here is a U.S. Navy Air Force brigade called the Blue Angels. And if we watch this video, you'll notice that I'm on YouTube. The top left-hand corner has these little arrows. And these arrows are kind of like a gravis pad. That means I can move it. So I'm moving this around. I see the pilots are taking selfies. And I'm inside of the cockpit of this plane. Now that's an expensive plane ticket, right? Notice how close the planes are. There's one right here, and there's a few more back here you can't quite see because of the smoke. And if we hold our horses here, I believe we're about to take off. I'll zip us ahead a little bit here. Yeah, here we go. It's time for takeoff. All right, so once we get airborne here, again in the cockpit of this plane, just taking off, we see how incredibly close these planes are to each other. This is one of the first views of VR 360 videos that I personally saw, the US Navy one. This is from 2015. This video is 5 years old. The people who created this video were using a gimbal, a rack, if you will, of cameras that were all together, a bunch of GoPros, and they use special software to stitch it together. Now, there are cameras that you can buy today that will do this kind of work for you. Ricoh Theta is one of them. Insta360 is another that do this exact thing for you. You just click go and it makes the 360 video. They're pretty amazing. But it's kind of creepy to see how close they are. Now this is neat because I'm on a web browser. If I did the same thing on my phone and went to YouTube, the YouTube app on my phone, I could use my phone like a window and move my head around. And as I move my head around up and down, the 360 video would go with me. So when I look up, I would see up. And when I look to my right, I would see to my right. So I wouldn't have to do it with a mouse if I was using the YouTube app. Right. All right, good. Let's keep that going there. Is everybody keeping up with me okay in the chat window there? We're good? I think we're okay so far. Okay, good. Excellent. So let's head back over to my, I want to present inside of this window. It's a little cleaner for us. I'll just skip over to here. There we go. Good. Okay. So the Blue Angels, again, that's a great example of VR Absorb and taking a real 360 and looking at it. Now, there's two other examples. Google Earth, I just shared maps with you a minute ago, that picture of the Eiffel Tower. It's an example of some of the virtual stuff you can do with Google Earth. They also have an app that you can add to the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive. There's also an app called The Blue, and The Blue takes you on a journey with a humpback whale. It's a really, really cool experience. You can swim with the whale, but it's computer generated. So in this case, this is where we start to diverge from actual 360 photos and 360 videos to 360 generated experiences using computer software like Unreal and Unity. Now, before we kind of depart from VR Absorb, Google Expeditions is a great program for engaging your students with that. Expeditions has over 900 places on the planet you can visit in 360. They often work well with these glasses here. My classroom tends to look a little bit more like this, where I'll use a tablet or my phone and lead my students in a journey. One difference here is that I don't use the cardboards with my students. We'll use some old tablets that we have, rather old ones that are almost 10 years old, do actually still work with Google Expeditions. We join through our Wi-Fi network, and together my students and I travel the world, and we get to see places and have meaningful dialogue about what they're actually seeing. So rather than what are you reading about or what did you see in the movie, what are you experiencing? And that lends itself to a whole different kind of conversation with children, which I think is incredibly powerful. All right, so absorb. Absorb, again, we were kind of taking in content. The content was made for us. Our interactivity in VR Absorb was relatively minimal. It was more guided and prescribed. VR Blend is where we start to interact more and make some experiences happen in the spaces. So we find that with social VR. And social VR is something that I'm going to come back to after I go through the framework here. But social VR includes applications where we go inside of a world and we can talk to each other and we can bring in three-dimensional assets to look at. Now, we're not really building with these assets yet, but we're looking at them. So here you're looking at a company called Roomy or the product called Roomy by Doghead Simulations. And so Roomy allows you to bring in three-dimensional assets like this engine here in the center of this photo, and people can talk to each other in that room. One thing I really like about Roomy is that as you move close to somebody, their volume level goes up. So it's almost like you're sharing that space together. I think that's kind of cool. AltSpace, which is the Microsoft product, does the same thing. In AltSpace, we can go right next to each other. We can hear volume increase as we get closer. And both products pull up slide decks and have really cool dialogue in a completely different world. We can have a conversation while standing on Mars if we wanted to, which in and of itself, I think, makes for a really cool experience. Also with VR Blend, you have products like Zennial Digital, which I'll play this clip for you. No, I have a little trouble with that. Okay, so in this case, it's a chemistry kit where you'll pick up a chemical compound, like on the table here. You've got lithium, so you can pick up lithium and drop it into a vial or container of water, H2O, and you'll see what happens with that reaction. And you can imagine that for a chemistry classroom, it would be a whole lot safer to do this in a virtual space than it would be in an actual real space. Some other cool games like Water Bears have a maker type thing where you can do a little bit of building and a little bit of activity in there. But then we start to get into create in a different way. And so for VR Create, the C in our ABC framework, we start to see things that you can develop product all by yourself, and you're going to make something that wasn't there. So it's you're moving past synthesis and you're actually creating. A couple of things you can use. Tilt Brush is one. It's a really neat tool that lets you paint and draw in a 360 space that does require a headset, so you do have to have a headset on. There's another really great one called Sketchfab that I've used where I built something and then exported it to my 3D printer. And that's kind of neat that you can export something you make in a virtual space. So for prototyping, you can build it and increase its size and walk around it and look for errors, then export it as a OBJ or STL file for your 3D printer. So there you're seeing that the utility of virtual reality is in a whole different way in VR Create. Now we're actually making things and using them in a way that will let us add to our real world as well. CoSpaces is a really great product for classrooms that works on web-based devices like Chromebooks or tablets. And CoSpaces lets you build in VR, and in some cases you can actually release it in AR. I really like using CoSpaces with my students. They have a freemium account where they have a free feature, and they have a pro account where you can have more building happen. I thought I would take a minute and share that with you because I think that it's really a powerful tool. So here's my CoSpaces window. I just logged in with my Microsoft account. Here's my account here. I'm using the free version. I wanted to share the free version with you so that there wasn't any confusion about what you can do beyond that. I'll share a little bit when we get in. Now, when I've done this with my students, I have had them go through the welcome screen. So when you open the welcome screen, I'll open it for you here. It's a really good embedded tutorial. This welcome screen will show students how to use CoSpaces, and they can go through these steps. Rather than me telling every kid what to do, I can have them go here and they kind of self-learn a bit through that, and then dive into the content. Now, to create a space, I'll create a CoSpace. I can create one CoSpace for free, and when I'm done with it, I can delete it and make another one. I'm going to make one that is a 3D environment. I could also take a 360 image. So where I took you to the streets of the Eiffel Tower in Paris, if I had that 360 photosphere, I could take it and upload it here and annotate it. So I could have 3D assets on top of a photo. I'm going to go with an environment for now. So we'll open this environment. All right, so here's my environment. I'm going to click with my mouse and just kind of rotate so I can see the cameras, the perspective that the viewer will be in when they arrive in my environment. Always helps me, even if I don't plan on using it later, to bring a virtual environment here. So in the bottom left, I'll pull up an environment. I'll click Edit. And I'll grab something like this mountainous scene. That looks nice. So now I have mountains. So if I rotate, the perspective is a little different for my viewers. So now they can see. And this is a real drag and drop, easy to do, low lift for the geekiness factor and the difficulty factor. It's relatively easy to do, to drag and drop. At home, I've done it with my own children. When they were young in early primary school, grades 2 and 3, they were able to hop right in here and start building on it. Now, I can change some of this, change the mood to nighttime, make it a cloudy day, go back to a sunny day. I think we'll prefer the sunny day today, right? We'll go to the library over here. And in the library, I have access to some assets. Now, there are more assets you can see that are locked that I might want to bring in. There are different jobs and other, I have the Grinch even and an angel here. If I want to go to animals, I have access to all of these animals. So I can click on this lion or just drag the lion up and drop him into my frame. Okay, and as I look at the lion, I have some tools that allow me to change him a bit. So I can rotate him. Oops, right down here. I can also increase his size. Put him on the ground, grab this one. So he can be a floating lion or on the ground, and his size here, grab that and rotate. Perfect. All right, let's put him back on the ground. Come on, buddy. There you go. Okay, maybe I'll add a mouse. Put him right next to the lion on the ground. Cool. And I'll rotate. Got a few more drag and drop things here. I can add a city scene. I should have an image or two. There's a house there I can add over here. Maybe make that house nice and big. There we go. Perfect. Some nature. I did this with a science teacher I work with, and she had her students build a food chain. So they went through and added animals in order of the food chain, and they used the coding feature in the top left, so that when they clicked, you know, the little fish gets eaten by the big fish, which gets eaten by the shark. So it does it in order, and it's using a simple block coding program, and you're kind of developing a game in doing so. And let's add a car here. That's a really big car. Let's minimize the size. There we go. I'll leave it there. All right, so what I've done is I've added to my virtual world. Now, if I click play, you see there's my lion. His ears are moving. Some of them move around. There's my mouse who's looking around. I'm going to click and drag my screen. And you can see there's my house and my car, my tree and my flower. I use the arrows on my keyboard to walk right by them. And I can rotate again as I'm moving around. Maybe we'll go a little closer to the lion here. Pretty neat. So for virtual reality, I'm creating my own world. If I use coding, I can click, and when I click, the lion roars. Maybe he chases the mouse, and the black coding will allow me to do that in this virtual space. So this can be really useful for storytelling. There's an augmented reality feature, which I'll talk about in my next session. I should be scheduled for that next week, where we take this exact thing and we drop them into the real world. So the same procedure, but we view it in the real world. Now, one thing that's kind of cool about using CoSpaces is there's an app for a tablet or a smartphone. So you can use the buttons on there like you would a game. There's also an app in the Oculus Go. So the Oculus Go is this smaller headset. And in this headset, I can build an environment, log into this headset with the same account, and I can be inside of the world that I created. And you can imagine for students how exciting that is to actually walk around next to animals and buildings that they placed in this world. And they're starting to get an experience for what video game designers do and how game designers use assets and create assets and place them in creative places. And so then the next level becomes using this as storytelling. And so how do students tell stories and make meaning of their world? And these tools can help with that. By, again, increasing empathy is one of the powers of virtual reality. Cool. All right, I'm going to go ahead and leave that there. Remember, if I wanted to create another one, it says you got to upgrade. Or I could just delete this one, delete, and then I can add a new one. It lets me add it. So that's the way that I kind of work around this freemium version. But the pro version is really cool too. The pro version, if you had the access to the funding for that, you could allow it to have multiple classes where your students could sign up in like a learning management system and complete assignments right inside of this space. Right, cool. I did leave a couple up here. You can share them with QR codes if you wanted to. So if you are to visit this slide deck again on your own, you can take a look at CoSpaces. We've got some US specific one on President's Day. We have the DNA model. Students can build museums. They can bring in their own assets, and they can really geek out with something like CoSpaces. It's a very powerful tool. Google Blocks is another one I had on there, which also allows for the 3D printing value. But I feel like a lot of the VR Create we covered with the CoSpaces. Right. Okay, now VR for remote learning. So we went through Absorb, Blend, and Create as a way to categorize different ways of approaching virtual reality. Are we looking for absorb experiences where the learner is taking something in and then you're going to have meaningful dialogue about it? Are we blending, where we're trying out science experiments and maybe mixing chemicals that we really shouldn't be mixing, but we're doing it in a virtual safe space? Or are we creating and making something that wasn't there? We have, an increased awareness of the value of remote learning by default, by disruption of disease in our world. And so for remote learning, there's some social VR applications to consider. And, each of them I think we should be mindful of and cautious of at the same time. So I want to walk you through some of those and how they work. I have a few here and one more actually at the end I'll share with you that has pros and cons that allow us to engage with our students. So some of these are incredibly powerful, and a lot of it depends on what kind of access our students have and what kind of access we have when they have it at home, or what kind of access do they have in school. And honestly, some of it's not incredibly accessible, as I'll share in a few minutes, but it will be. The cost of these devices is coming down. The interfaces that we need to get a hold of or access are becoming more readily available. So it's good to look at what's coming so that we can start to plan for that. A couple of ones, those ones from that slide there, that you can start exploring relatively quickly. are AltSpace, Engage, Mozilla Hubs, Rec Room, and Roomy. Those are 5 ones that I would recommend. I do have a 6th one I'll share with you in a couple of minutes. But let me show you the requirements for accessing these tools. So in the case of AltSpace, it's a Microsoft product. It's got general meeting spaces on it. On your laptop, if you have a Windows device, you can access it in 2D right on a flat screen. If you have a headset, like one of these VR glasses I was talking about, you can view it there. And they also have an Android app. So they don't play super nice with Macs right now or iPhones. In AltSpace, you have an avatar that moves around. It's a cartoon-like avatar. And you don't have the ability to do much customizing with that. Many of them you don't anymore. Engage is another platform. It's a beautiful platform. It's very, very nice, very well designed. Does require that you have Windows or you have one of these devices to have access to it. I've used Engaged in VR, in a VR headset, and found it to be a very powerful tool. Mozilla Hubs, their biggest advantage right now, and we're going to look at it together if you'll join me in a few minutes. Their biggest advantage is that it's web-based. So all you need is a web browser, which is a pretty low lift for what we need right now just to have internet access. That's becoming more readily available. It's not 100% around the globe, but we're getting closer than we are, I think, to VR goggles for everybody. Mozilla Hubs works on phones as well, both iOS and Android. Your avatars can move around, and you can customize those avatars, as I'll share with you. Rec Room is another one. Rec Room is a game-based platform. It does have some creation tools, so you can do some building, and everything you do with the buildings and creating and animating and all that stays in Rec Room. Doesn't have that ability to be exported like some of the tools we talked about. Rec Room works with Windows as well, the VR headsets, and there is an iOS app for an iPhone. Fair warning, Rec Room is really wide open. There's a lot of people on Rec Room, and they're not always being appropriate with each other. So it's not secure, it's not locked down. It's pretty much wide open, a little bit like the Wild Wild West. More so, I think, than the other ones. AltSpace is a little bit like that, but Rec Room seems to have a younger population that's doing quite a bit more, I think, and again, something we should be really cautious with. Roomy is a great tool as well. I like Roomy. I shared an image with you earlier. Roomy, like many of these tools, lets you bring in 3D assets to look at, to talk about. If you have a 3D model you want to look at or slides, it can all come right inside of Roomy, making it a pretty cool tool. And then this other tool here that I wanted to share is Spatial. Now, Spatial.io just released a free version of their product right now during the pandemic, allowing people to use their space in a pretty amazing way. Now, Spatial goes between AR and VR. It does both. So I wanted to show you an image of it here, a video, because I think the video says quite a lot. So here in Spatial, people might put on a Microsoft HoloLens. They might put on VR goggles. They may look at it through their phone. Oops, jump ahead. Or they may actually just look at it on their laptop. So here this video is running through. Oh, we're a little laggy here. All right, I'm going to cut ahead a little bit. Okay, so here's this guy putting on his VR goggles. Oh, that's so laggy. Let me go ahead and stop it, and we'll try it in the window here. What was I saying about internet becoming more and more accessible? Mine is super laggy. Okay, so here she's put on her HoloLens, and because it's clear, she sees a holographic image. So the glasses provide that. Now you can do it in VR, and you'll be transported to a different space. The space, you could look like this, where you have images up on the wall, you have Post-its on the wall, People can join from their laptop or they can join from a headset, making it more and more accessible. Adding images. I like this scene here. You got two in the HoloLens, one person elsewhere standing. It uses your face and wraps your face around a more human-looking avatar. Here you can see someone has joined from their webcam, so they're not using an expensive device other than their webcam. And they're looking at Mars and maybe they're planning for a Mars rover or something like that. Again, these are the HoloLens here that this person is using would bring these people into their space, as to a virtual reality one, which would bring you somewhere else. Go ahead and stop there. Yeah, excellent, cool. And that's spatial. I've used spatial. I had some conversations with National Geographic just last week in spatial, talking about using it for collecting of assets. You know, scanning images that children at home might be scanning nature with a smartphone and bringing in the 3D asset so that they can show their class in a virtual space. So it's a whole different way of looking at it. And again, that's coming from spatial. Before we jump in, we're going to jump into Mozilla Hubs in a minute here. Before we do that, I wanted to make sure that I was giving time to any questions that you might have regarding the things that we're going through together. Let's take a look at where we are. The Merge Cube. Yeah, so the Merge Cube is a form of virtual reality or augmented reality. So you can use the cube with something like CoSpaces. Merge Cube is a really cool tool. Here's one right here. Really like Merge Cube. I'll talk about them in my augmented reality section. The Merge Cube, you can use a phone and put the solar system in your hand and rotate it. That would be categorized as augmented reality. So Merge Cube, super cool. We'll spend some time on that in my later on session. And I've got some wows that's amazing. So people seem happy. I'll just keep rolling. Yeah, that's cool. You used Merge Cube. Thank you. I love it. I'm wondering if you'll bear with me to try to use Mozilla. Mozilla has the ability to bring us into a room together. So let me walk you through the steps, and if anybody on the call would like to try it with me, it's pretty neat. So let's take a look. I'll go back to my browser. All right, here we go. So Mozilla Hubs. So for Mozilla Hubs, I can create my own custom room. I'm just going to jump into one of theirs here by clicking Create a Room. They have a creation tool they call Spoke. So if you think of hubs and spokes, they're talking about a wheel. I think Mozilla is saying they reinvented the wheel. I believe that's what's going on. All right, so I'm going to enter the room. I literally just went to Mozilla and clicked Join or Create a Room. So I'm going to enter the room. It's going to ask me my name and avatar. Mozilla is not collecting any information, which sets them apart from a lot of these other products. For security, my name is not being collected. I'm not logging in. I'm just jumping in like this. I could change my name if I wanted to. I'll make my name say Micah so that other people in the room will recognize me. I can browse the avatars. Maybe I'll throw in an avatar of this Ducky Blub Blub. I'm not really sure what that means. Okay, so I'm going to be this character. My name is Micah, and I'll click Accept. All right, so now that I'm here, I'm going to choose a scene that's a little bit more broad. Oops, that wants me to use that. All right, I'm going to stay right in this scene. The other scenes are, I'd have to log in, but again, we were trying that without logging in. I'm going to enter the screen. Notice I could use my Oculus headset, but I'm going to stay right on my desktop. And it says mic access need to be heard by others. So I would grant permission, and it would pick up my microphone. And I click Next. I think I got a lock here. I got to fix that. Allow. Perfect. Very good. Okay. Back. And, oh, refresh, of course. Okay, you can use my phone. There you go. Enter that room again. Looks like I need to go back through that step just to grab my microphone there. I haven't used it on this browser before, so that's what that setting has to do with. All right, choosing. Yes, nothing ever goes wrong with live demos from what I have found. All right, let's share it out. So what we'll do now is if anyone would like to, here's the link. So if you want to hop into this link, you can join me in this window. Let me go ahead and paste it in the chat here. All right. And we'll go back. All right. Looks like I have one join me already. Let's see if I can find you. Heart Lobs 11399. So you're in the lobby. So we're going to enter the room. Looks like our internet might be a little laggy. Let's fix this. Room settings. Look at that. My audio is a bit messed up. Might be my browser. So I think what I'll do is I'll switch browsers and I'll see if I can control that better in my browser. So one of you join me. Give me 1 second and we're going to hop out of this browser and we'll go into another one here. Let's close some of this down. Close. Close. All right, we'll do something like this. And yes, let me repaste my link. I'm going to do it in a different browser window. Had a little bit of trouble with that browser for whatever reason. So give me 1 second. And let's go ahead and get this up here. All right, cool. Yeah, the numeric code and all that, that's on my end. Let me go ahead and reshare that with you. All right, so now you should see my Mozilla hubs here. I'm going to hit enter or create room. And it's coming up right now. We only have about 10 minutes here. We're going to do an amazing couple of things in just 10 minutes. It's going to change the world. I'm feeling it. All right, enter the room. And let me change my name. So I'm going through the same process of just entering this information. Having a little trouble getting into the room here. All right. And I will unmute my mic and click enter. Okay, so I made it into the room. I had a little browser trouble there earlier. I'm going to go ahead and paste my window for you. So here is my hub. So if you try just clicking on hub link here, this window, it should get you right into my room, and we'll see what happens. All right, looks like somebody's joining me. Sweet. All right, so I'm just zooming around here. I'm going to use my arrow keys. I've got 2 other people in here. Using the arrow keys on my keyboard, walking around. Awesome. I've got a whole bunch of people hopping in. There you are. There's Orinoco Goose 1137. So I'm leaving my volume. I'll leave it muted just so you don't get an echo from the team meet. I have my team window open as well. That might be messing up a few things. I did this with 10 students and had them hop in with me and we did a chat. I used a slightly larger space with them. And in our larger space, The proximity volume didn't change, so we were all right next to each other the whole time. They had a little trouble keeping their volume off, I found. If you're in the lobby, you can click join the room. Let's pull this up over here. Sounds like we've got some people hopping in here. There we go. Blue Build 13848 is joining. Awesome. There's Tina. Hi, Tina. I like your panda bear. So there's some really cool stuff we can do with this space. It looks like we have, oh, cool. Orinoco Goose has got this all figured out. Thanks for bringing in the spaceship. I love it. And we can fly it around. It looks like I just grabbed your spaceship and I can fly it. That's so cool. These are Google Poly objects that we can bring in using this window here. So I can hit my pencil and bring in. I can draw in the space as well. So if I wanted to draw on this tree, I can draw here. Say something really meaningful on this tree, and then shut off my pencil. Maybe it's not very meaningful, but you got the idea. Using the wand here, so the magic wand brings me to Google Poly Images, so I can bring an astronaut in just by clicking on it, and it just drops an astronaut into the room. So there's my astronaut, which I can pick up and move around. Really, really cool. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the room, and I wanted to show you another feature that Mozilla has here. So let's go ahead and close the room. And we'll leave the room. Back to here. All right, sweet. Almost there. Okay, so in Mozilla Hubs, when we go to Hubs, we can also go to Spoke, as I shared with you. So Spoke is their building platform. So if I wanted to build a custom learning environment with a drag and drop menu that has screens, as you can see right here in the middle, I can build a screen and have the screen really, really big to watch a movie on. I can build an amphitheater setting where my students and I can work together. Really, really cool. I mean, it's a powerful program. The downside of Spoke, as opposed to AltSpace, in AltSpace, when I host an event and I have people join me, I have the ability to mute everybody. So if I'm trying to have a conversation or maybe give the direction, this is what we're going to do today. I can give that really clearly by just quickly muting my students. In Spoke or Mozilla, excuse me, Hubs, I don't have that ability. So what I would have to do is we'd have to establish classroom protocols likely before going in, like many of us had to do with Zoom and Meet and Teams with our students already. We had to say, okay, mute your mics, turn your cameras on, turn them off, all that kind of conversation you need to have ahead of time, because once they get into Mozilla Hubs, you might lose them otherwise. So let them have some expectations about what it's going to be like when we get in there. What does the space a little bit look like? Show them some video or shots. And just say, this is a great space. It's a lot of fun. And we're also going to learn it to have some conversation and to have a sense of presence. Remember, presence is what we talked about earlier on, right? Very cool. When I get started with Hubs, I have Spoke, I have a tutorial I can go to, or I can just dive into a project that gives me some kind of blank space. We were on River Island. That was the main one we started at. I like the crater. I can jump into a crater here. Gives a big wide open space. This is the one that I experimented with my students on Crater because I wanted to spread them out and give them the ability to do like a stations activity where they moved around a room. I have a colleague who used this to build an art gallery. So students took pictures of their artwork that they did in school, and they uploaded the images, and people walk through an art gallery and viewed their portraits and their paintings. It was actually really fantastic. You have objects in here you can grab, an architecture kit that pulls up a bunch of pre-made assets. You can really geek out with this program. There's a lot that can be done with it. Google Poly is a space that I tend to use a lot. You can pull in a nice waterfall scene here, drop it in, and notice the arrows here are similar to what we see with programs like CoSpaces, same idea. But you can also see that this is a little bit harder to use than CoSpaces, so it's not quite the same thing. When you want to use this tool, you can click Publish to Hubs, and then you'll have your own custom learning space that you can share for your students to join. You can go ahead and stop sharing the screen. All right, let's go like this, and then do this. Sorry, I'm talking to myself. It's how I get by. All right. I thought I would just give you my contact information at the end here so that if there's something I can help you with, you have access to me. So let's get back to the end of this thing here. Right. All right. So we did Mozilla Hubs. I do like its accessibility. I think it's a big deal for our classroom. Again, it just needs good internet to get there, as you see. For me, the stickiness I had with the mics and everything likely had to do with having Microsoft Teams open at the same time. My students had trouble with that. I have a Chromebook school that's one-to-one, and my students were using Google Meet and trying to join hubs at the same time. And because both are using a lot of bandwidth and a lot of audio and expectations off the computer, they had some difficulty with that. It seemed like one or the other seems to be best. Let's go ahead and just take you through a couple more things. So any questions for me? This is my avatar in AltSpace. My company, Ready Learner One, has a show on AltSpace where we talk to educators and actors and futurists and talk about using VR for good with students and with learning in general. Follow me on Twitter. I tweet out when we have that event. It's usually on Tuesdays, not this week. We're taking the week off, but in July we have another one around July 14th. So feel free to email me. We can set up a chat and talk more personally about it. I'll also have office hours coming up through this Microsoft Q program. So just pay attention to my thread if you want to chat with me individually. And I thank you all for coming. I really hope that you learned something and found it to be valuable. I really enjoy these tools, and what I enjoy most is the potential for powerful learning with my students. So thank you all, and have a great day, evening, morning. I hope to see you again. Thank you. Thanks, Tyler. Thanks, Ian. Thank Ashwini. Thank you, Shengen. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Richard. Thank you. Bye.